Okay, it looks like we're ready to go at 7 p.m. So, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala ahlihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome and good evening. My name is Nina Raj, and I'm the Projects and Grants Coordinator at Nisa Helpline, and I will also be your host for today. Thank you for joining our fourth workshop in the series, Mental Health and Nutrition, in collaboration with Bell Let's Talk. Through our partnership, we're hosting a series of virtual workshops called Her Wellness Journey. These workshops are designed to improve Muslim women's access to social support, build self-esteem, and emotional well-being. Before we begin, just a couple of housekeeping rules to ensure our workshop runs smoothly. First, please ensure your mic is off so the session is uninterrupted. If you have any questions, for those on Zoom, please use the Q&A window to ask questions to the hosting panelists. Should be at the bottom of your Zoom. We will either reply back to you via text in the Q&A window or answer your question during the live. For those on Facebook, welcome. Please share your question in the comments section and it will be answered, inshallah, during the live. We will also be sharing polling questions during the presentation to keep you engaged, as well as to help us understand you, your needs, and preferences for future workshops. Now, without further ado, this evening we're joined by our honored guest, Nasteho Ahmed, to discuss the connection between nutrition and mental health. She is also known as Naz Ahmed. She's a certified holistic nutritionist and a passionate mental wellness advocate. She was born in Djibouti but grew up here in Canada. She is anchored in both Somali traditions and Canadian culture and utilizes this knowledge in her practice. She's dedicated to promoting wellness through nutrition and healthy eating habits. She's an avid YouTuber who shares her ideas freely to help others improve their diet and enhance the quality of their lives. Her YouTube channel has thousands of followers from around the world. In addition to nutrition and healthy diet, Naz also shares advice on beauty and the importance of having, a positive mindset to enhance overall well-being. Naz hopes to educate and inspire the general public to opt for more natural and healthier food choices that would nourish not only the body, but also the mind and the soul. She's well known in the Somali community around the world as a nutrition expert, nutrition educator, mental health advocate, and as a successful multiple business owner. Her lifelong goal is to encourage people to have a holistic approach to health and well-being and live a purposeful life. Please join me in welcoming Naz Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum, Naz. How are you doing this evening?
Wa alaikum salam. I'm great, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, I would like the audience to respond to the first set of survey questions. They're going to pop up on your Zoom screen. I mentioned earlier that they would. If you feel uncomfortable responding, that's really okay. You're not obligated to answer them. Your replies will remain anonymous. For those who choose to respond, we'll give you like 30 seconds. It's really to help us just understand the audience. So if we can put up those poll questions. So I'll just give you like 30 seconds. Awesome, I see the responses are coming in. Okay, cool. Looks like 80% of people were able to respond. Awesome. All right. Great. So thank you for your input. Naz, the stage is yours.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you guys. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We're going to start our presentation with a dua. So Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. My Lord, expand for me my breast with assurance and ease for me my task and untie the knots from my tongue that they may understand my speech. Welcome everyone. So today we're going to be talking about nutrition and mental health. I know it's not two subjects that we really talk about together, but today we're going to be talking about that, and it's really nice because Ramadan, it's in 2-3 days. So inshallah, I hope that you guys will all benefit from this presentation. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, let's start. So why does nutrition matters? Before we dive in
Sorry,
into
Nas, can you share your screen, the presentation?
my bad,
Oh, it's okay.
I think.
There you go. Yes, we can see it now. Thank you. Oh, you're muted. It's all good. Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. All right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So first of all, why does nutrition matters? Um, Before we dive in into the presentation, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit more information about me. So I wear many hats. You know, I work 9 to 5. I own 3 businesses. I'm a community activist. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I do a lot of things on a daily basis, and a lot of people ask me, how am I able to balance it all? How am I able to do all those things, you know, at the same time? And my answer is always the same: nutrition, nutrition, nutrition. And you know, there's a say, you are what you eat. And for me, I mean, like, I do feel a huge difference when I eat, you know, like my cheat days, for example, and I eat junk food, especially gluten. For me, gluten is a big thing. I do feel a big difference in terms of energy, sleep, focus, and a lot of different things. So the reason why I wanted to start by saying this is because, you know, it's as simple as when you drink coffee in the morning, right? Before your first sip of coffee in the morning, a lot of people who are coffee addicts cannot focus, and their personality is completely different. As soon as they drink that little sip of coffee, you know, they're more alive and they're more, you know, like, you know, you can actually have a conversation with them. So you are what you eat. And for me, how it all started, my mental health issue or journey actually led me to become a nutritionist. So long story short, in 2016, I went through burnout. I mean, I was full time doing my master's degree. I was working in a call centers, and call centers are known, you know, for you know, burnout. And also because you know, it's very common in the Muslim community, especially in the African community. When you're a girl, you're also a mom, kind of. I wasn't married back then, but I was living with my siblings. But I was the one cooking, cleaning, and doing everything. So I went through a burnout. Of course, I did, you know, went through a therapy, and I learned coping mechanism, how to cope better with my anxiety and all that. But really, what really helped me is when I changed what I was eating. So nutrition. And then when I saw that the food that I was taking had a huge impact in my overall well-being, I became passionate about it. And then I started sharing everywhere, because that's how I am. Whenever I found something, I like to share it with the world. And soon enough, I decided to just get my certification to become a nutritionist. So that's really, for me, that's why it's a no-brainer, right? Nutrition and mental health are very connected, and that's my storyline. And when it comes to your body, you know, the body is very complex. There's no one way to solve a problem. You know, if you have a headache, you can take Advil or Tylenol, but you really have to find what is because you don't want to just treat symptoms. You want to treat the cause of your illness, right? Headache is a small little thing, but some people deal with migraine on a daily basis. I had some clients actually having migraines for years and years, and not knowing what was the cause of the migraine. So the body is very complex, and it's really essential in that sense to have an holistic approach. So my first question for you guys, because I want to test the water, do you guys believe there's a connection between mental health and nutrition? I'm going to give you guys a few seconds just to get an overall sense of, you know, the audience. so you guys can answer the questions, and then we'll have all right. So 95% of you guys said yes, 5% said no. And I think it's nice to see that at least a lot of people are aware of, how nutrition can impact your overall well-being. And for the 5%, I mean, you're here for, to learn that. So hopefully we will get a better idea of like how nutrition impacts your mental health. So let's dive in, how it all works. So let's start by defining mental health. Obviously, the answer that I have here is very generic. It's a disorder that affects the mood, the thinking, and the behavior. That's really general. And it's more complex than that, but overall, that's what it is. There's different forms of mental health issues. The one that we all know is anxiety, depression. There's PTSD, eating disorders, neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, etc., etc., etc. But the main two ones that are very not popular, but that affect 90% of the population are anxiety and depression. Now, what can cause or trigger mental health issues? A lot of things can trigger it. It can be DNA, genetic. I don't really like to say DNA, because when people hear that mental health issues can be genetic, it's alarming, right? But there's a lot of DNAs that we have in our body that are not necessarily activated. So for example, most of us do have cancer DNAs, but it's really what you do on a daily basis, or your environment, what can trigger that DNA to be activated. So it's not because, for example, your parents or in your DNA you have in your ancestors there's some people who died from cancer, that you will necessarily die from cancer. The same goes with diabetes. It basically just means that you're more prone to it. And then we have environmental, we have trauma, lifestyle, drug abuse, for example, and then nutrition. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the link between nutrition and mental health issues, we're going to be talking about this in a more detail way in a few seconds. But there's this saying, you are what you eat, and I completely agree with that. What you eat can affect the way you feel and even frame your whole personality. And it's we can go back to the example of the person who drinks the coffee in the morning. Definitely there, and I've seen that. I was actually a coffee addict before, but I decided to slow down. But for me, I remember when I would wake up in the morning, before taking my coffee, I wouldn't want to talk to nobody. So it really frames your whole personality. And then before we dive in, I just want to talk about inflammation, because it's something that it's something that is very important to define before we talk about the link between mental health and nutrition, in the sense that, first of all, inflammation. What is inflammation? Inflammation is when your immune system is overactivated, or your body just, there's a huge boost of immune system happening. So your body is just, in an inflammatory state. But there's something that the reason why I wanted to share this information with you guys is because mental health issues can cause inflammation in your body. So because you have a mental health issues, you can get sick, right? Or you might have migraine, or you might have rosacea, or you might have back pain. So it does cause inflammation in your body. But the other way around is also true, because of what you're eating, because we're going to be talking about food intolerance and food sensitivity in a few seconds. But because of what you're eating, the food that you're eating might cause inflammation in your body, and that inflammation can cause mental health issues. So it's like a cycle. Sorry if you hear my little boy in the background. He's in the room next to my office, so bear with me. All right, so now let's talk about nutrition guidelines. How you can properly fuel your body. So I spoke about food intolerance and food sensitivity a few seconds ago, but I thought that it would be very interesting to really share the difference between the two, because a lot of people know what is food intolerance. So if you're intolerant to any food, it's most likely like allergies, um, and most people know when they're intolerant to certain food, right? The example I have here, it's celiac disease. So gluten intolerance, for example, celiac disease is a disease that it's most likely, in your DNA, not in your DNA, but it's genetic, and you are born with it most likely, or it's something that you develop in the years. But gluten intolerance, people who are intolerant to gluten cannot tolerate it. Their body cannot digest gluten at all. Versus gluten sensitivity. In my case, for example, I know now that I'm sensitive to gluten, but the symptoms of gluten sensitivity are not as obvious as gluten intolerance. Someone who's intolerant to gluten will get sick. It depends. Some people can even die from, gluten consumption. But sensitivity is very subtle, and it expresses differently depending on, who is sensitive to it. So for me, gluten sensitivity symptoms that I have is, for example, lack of sleep, brain fog, a little bit of anxiety, borderline depression. So the symptoms are very settle, and it's very hard to pinpoint when you're sensitive to something. But I will tell you guys in a few minutes or seconds exactly what you can do to know if you're sensitive to a certain food. And also, gluten sensitivity cannot really be tested unless you go to a clinic and then they check your gut flora. And then it's very expensive. But if you go see your doctor will be able to give you intolerance test or allergy test. But it's really hard to know to make any sensitivity tests, if that makes any sense. So before talking about the recommended diets for mental health, I always like to present exactly what to avoid. I think the brain works better like that. Tell me exactly what I need to stay away from, and the rest is the rest, right? So what to avoid? The first being high glycemic food, including sugar and carbohydrate. Sugar is a no-brainer. I mean, sugar is technically a drug, because a drug is defined as something that when you stop consuming, you get a withdrawal. So sugar, that's a no-brainer. I don't need to explain too much about sugar or talk too much about sugar. But carbohydrates, all carbohydrates are not created equal. Some can spike your blood sugar, and other are more complex, and it takes longer for your body to or your blood sugar to react to it. A simple example is, for example, when you consume mango, that will spike your blood sugar, and versus when you consume something more complex like oatmeal, for example, your body takes more time to break it down and digest it. So staying away from high glycemic food, including sugar and carbohydrate. And then, of course, junk food, that's also a no-brainer. There's a lot of junk food are highly processed, and also some, companies do use chemicals to make the food taste better. The simple example that I can give you guys is the additive that they put in McDonald's fries, for example. If you really look at McDonald's fries, they don't look like much, right? They don't even look appetizing, but they smell amazing. And that's because of the additive that they put in the fries at McDonald's. And your body is just confused because it's not natural, and it doesn't know what to do with it. So not only you will gain weight, but it will also disturb your hormones. And then eventually will do a lot of other damages to your body. And we'll talk about hormones in a few seconds, but I just wanted to talk about junk food. And then gluten. Gluten is actually very recent. We don't know much about gluten because in the life span of human, gluten, it has only been there for the past 10,000 years. Before that, we were not consuming gluten. Gluten is a protein present in cereals like rye, flour, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really recent. A lot of people have a hard time digesting properly gluten. And again, some people might be sensitive, other be intolerant, but overall, gluten is a big one. And then we have dairy, cow milk, especially because cow milk has also a protein. Other than lactose, yes, some people are lactose intolerant, but lactose is more a sugar. But cow milk has a protein that a lot of people, especially African descent, people from Africa, or have or people who are African descent, have hard time to digest cow milk. Yes, you might drink milk and feel fine, but the symptoms again of you being sensitive to cow milk are very subtle. It can be anxiety, it can be depression, it can be migraine, it can be sleepless night, it can be stress, it can be a lot of things. So those ones are the main ones that I wanted to share with you guys. But again, we will talk about how you can check, how you can find what you're sensitive to in a few seconds, because it can be more specific to you, but those ones are the big ones. And then what are the recommended diets for mental health, right? So the first one being the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet actually was initially invented for kids with autism. And it's a more extreme ketogenic diet than the mainstream one that most people follow nowadays. And the main idea that you have to understand with the ketogenic diet is that the body basically uses two sources of energy. There's ketones and glucose. Ketones bodies are what your body creates. For example, like at the end of the Ramadan, right? At the end of the Ramadan, it's easier for you to fast. You're more you don't have brain fogs. You can better deal with fasting versus the beginning of Ramadan, because uh, on a daily basis, most people use glucose as a source of energy versus ketones. Ketones, it's a more complex fuel, and the body actually spends more energy or uses more energy to properly, or to uses ketones as a source of energy. That's why a lot of people lose a lot of weight when they follow a ketogenic diet. But coming back to the autism, the reason why we see a lot of success for kids with autism is because the ketogenic diet is a staple. It doesn't spike. There's no sugar intake, so your blood sugar are always stable, and you and yeah, you it does the nervous system is also very calm, because there's not a lot of a spike in insulin. And we will talk about insulin and other important hormones in a few seconds, but that's generally the science behind the ketogenic diets. A lot of people use it for weight loss, yes, but also a lot of people like me, I do follow a ketogenic diet, and that's actually the diet that helped me back in 2016. But a lot of people also use it as a healing diet, and to better manage their anxiety and depression, and et cetera, et cetera. And then we have the low carb diet, which is now really, really keto, but it's more low carb diet. So you don't consume high carbs fruits, for example, like banana or mango. You still consume watermelon, apple, but no rice, no pasta, and et cetera, et cetera. And then we have the Mediterranean diet, which is fish. The main source of protein is fish, and then we have vegetables and fruits. And then we have the paleo diet, which is whole food. And the paleo diets, put in a simple way, it's everything that has no label. So all your fruits, all your vegetables, all your protein. As soon as there's a label on it, it's not paleo anymore. It's true that nowadays there's like paleo cookies, but if you check the ingredients, it's pretty straightforward ingredients like almond flour, etc., etc. And then we have the gluten-free diet, and that diet is, it's for people who do not want to try something as extreme as the keto diet or the paleo diet, because nowadays you can still enjoy, gluten-free bread, etc., etc. And then we have a balanced diet, but I mean, that one's debatable. What is a balanced diet, right? And everybody is unique. So what is a balanced diet for me might not be the same for you. So now, the golden rule is for you to know if you're sensitive to something. You have to try an elimination diet. And that's what I did in 2016. I eliminated gluten. I knew that sugar, obviously, that's a no-brainer. So I did eliminate sugar. But then the second thing that I worked on was gluten and then dairy. So for 4 to 6 weeks, try to eliminate gluten and dairy, maybe both at the same time. And then after 4 to 6 weeks, try to reintroduce one. So gluten first, and then see how you feel. If you don't feel any difference, then you might not be sensitive. If you do feel a huge difference, then maybe you're sensitive to gluten. And then do the same with dairy. And that's usually how you know if you're sensitive to a certain type of food. Now let's talk about supplementation, right? So which supplement to take, how to choose good supplements. There's a lot of supplements on the market, but every time I always try to emphasize on food. If you're lacking iron, for example, that's very common for women to be lacking in iron. Try to find it in food first, because when you get your vitamins and minerals and nutrients from food, it's more bioavailable compared to when you get it from supplements. So food is the first thing. For example, if you are iron deficient, the food that I always advise people from my community, East Africa or Somali, is always consume organ meats. So in our culture, we actually consume, liver and hearts. It's actually very good, but it's something we all grew up with. So it's very rich in minerals. So it's always better for you to go towards or take the food or nutrition route compared to just getting your supplementation, because supplements, the word itself, supplement, it's an extra thing that you can add to your diet. It should not be the only thing you do. You can take iron supplements and not change your diet and expect to see an improvements, right? And then when it comes to choosing your supplementation, make sure it's oil based. There's some nowadays they sell capsule, powder capsule, and also oil based. Those ones are the most bioavailable, and your body just absorb it better than when it's a pill, right? And then there's also power formula, some power blend, like electrolyte blend, for example, are good. And then the different dietary intervention or supplementation that I can advise you guys is the first one being vitamin D. Vitamin D is the only vitamin that actually acts as like a hormone. It's the sun vitamin. We get it through the sun. So it's only if you go outside and expose yourself to the sun that you get vitamin D. That's why there's something called seasonal depression. A lot of people talk about seasonal depression without really knowing what it is. It's basically just in the winter time, because it's snowing outside, you're most likely indoors, or the sun is not out for too long. So during winter, I always recommend, taking vitamin D. And then we have vitamin C, vitamin B complex. I say B complex because in vitamin B, the B vitamins are there's a lot of them. There's B12, BA, B1, B2, B12, and et cetera, et cetera. So might as well just get a B complex. And then for the minerals, we have zinc, iron, potassium, and magnesium. If you have hard time sleeping at night, you're most likely deficient in magnesium and potassium. And minerals compared to vitamins are water soluble, meaning that they actually leave your body quicker than vitamins. They don't stay. If today, for example, I drink electrolyte blend, tomorrow my body might need it again because it goes with the urine. So it's something that you need to be aware of and you need to replenish. And then when it comes to adaptogen, so this is something that I found recently. Adaptogen is, long story, well, to put it in a simple way, it adapts to your body's need, right? So if your body is in a highly stressful state, it will just adapt to your nervous system. So it's really powerful. One of the ones that most people know is turmeric. It's a type of adaptogen. It's very strong. It's also a high in anti-inflammation. But the one that I wanted to talk about is ashwagandha. So ashwagandha is known to calm stress and anxiety, but a lot of people also use it for memory improvement, fertility enhancement. It has a lot of benefits. But ashwagandha is really good for stress and anxiety, and I've been actually consuming it for the past month, and I do feel a huge difference. This morning I was very stressed and I took ashwagandha and it really calmed me down. So ashwagandha is a good one. And then one thing that I wanted to emphasize is that unlike medications, vitamins and supplements benefits are not immediate, and it can take days to weeks before you even begin to notice effects. So it's not because you're taking vitamin C for a week that you will see results right away. You have to be consistent with it. So now we're quickly going to be talking about the powerful trio. That's how I call them. It's gut health, sleep, and fasting. So gut health. I spoke about insulin a little bit, but I really want to bring your attention to 3 different hormones. Insulin, which is the sugar control hormone, it reacts to glucose whenever you consume a lot of sweets or sugary food. Your body will create a lot of insulin, and the more you consume sugar, the more you become insulin resistant, and that's basically type 2 diabetes. And then we have serotonin, which is known as the happy hormone, and then cortisol, the stress hormone. The reason why I wanted to talk about those different hormones is that now we know that 90% of hormones are produced in the gastrointestinal tract. So it makes sense that our gut does more than just help with food digestion. It helps with it has an essential role in our overall well-being. Some people even say that our gut is our second brain. So because I mean, hormones are the one dictating your brain what to do, and vice versa, right? But they are created in our gut flora. And also a little bonus information: if you're someone who always crave sweets, most likely you have more bad bacteria than good bacteria. And that's why it's important to take probiotics and prebiotics, but I will share more in detail in a few minutes. And then the second one being sleep, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of the never-ending cycle between sleep, nutrition, and mental health. You know, if you don't sleep well, you don't, mentally you're not performance, you're not concentrated, and you also do not make good nutritional choices on a daily basis. So it's a never-ending cycle. And then also what you eat can impact the way how the quality of your sleep, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's very important to fix your sleep, and nutrition has a big say in that. And then fasting. So this question, I actually have this question for you guys. Are you guys familiar with intermittent fasting, or it's also called time restrictive eating? So I will give you guys a few seconds before I continue, but you guys can answer that for me. And it's okay if you don't know much about it. That's what we are here for. Okay, now wait for the answer. I'm still waiting for the poll. Oh, okay. So we have it here. So 94% of you guys are familiar with it, and 6% are not. And of course, we'd like to know more about it, of course. So let's go back. All right, so fasting. Of course, we know Ramadan fasting, right? Ramadan fasting is dry fasting, we call it, because we don't consume any water. And also, Islam promotes fasting. There is, the Sunnah fast. Because I mean, like fasting, it's a whole presentation on its own, but fasting helps the body to heal. But the more common one is intermittent fasting. You can't really dry fast your whole life, right? And when it comes to nutrition, we want you guys to um, not really follow a diet, but follow something that can be part of your lifestyle. And someone who follows intermittent fasting is most likely going to intermittent fasting their entire life. And it's funny because nowadays we call it something, but back then people would intermittent fast on a normal basis, right? People back in the days did not snack all the time. People used to even, like, if we think about our ancestor, they would eat once or twice a day, but they were more performant, on a daily basis. They're bone-wise, they were stronger. And back in the day, compared to now, people used to die from infection diseases and all that, and viruses. But nowadays, people are die from diabetes and hypertension, and that's food related, like, diseases. So intermittent fasting, long story short, there's different ways to fast. We have 12-12. That's the one that most people should do. 12 hours of the day you're fasting, and then 12 hours of the day you're eating. For example, 7 a.m. you start eating at 7 in the morning, and then your last meal is at 7 p.m. That's what most people should do, right? And then we have 16-8, which is fasting for 16 hours and eating for 8 hours. And then we have 18-6, 24. As you can see, the more hours you're fasting, the better, because your body is resilient. Yes, you can fast and not die, right? And then we have 2MAD, which is 2 meals a day, no snack. And then we have OMAD, 1 meal a day. And then we have ADF, and that's the one I follow for the past 2-3 months. I water fast. So it's basically water fasting, right? So I eat one day and I fast and I feast the other day. I feast one day and I fast one day. And usually on days that I have a very busy schedule, my body is really my body is adapted to fasting now. So I love fasting when I'm very busy. Today, for example, I'm fasting. I feel more focused when I'm fasting. And I just, frankly, if I don't have the time to even, make myself a decent meal, I'd rather just fast and benefit from it than just, skip meals, and etc. And then, of course, while you're fasting, your body is healing itself and detoxifying, and it is also fighting against inflammation. And we spoke about inflammation in the first slide. So fasting is also a great tool to utilize. So now I shared a lot of information. You guys want to know exactly what to do, right? So this is a suggested protocol to follow. You don't have to follow it, all together, but it's just when I when I watch presentations, I always like to have, an idea of what exactly to do, because we spoke about a lot of problems, but let's talk about solutions now. So the first thing you can do is obviously try an elimination diet. So cut sugar, that's a no-brainer. Gluten and dairy, those ones are very important. For 4 to 6 weeks, so Ramadan is actually very um, it's the best time to try that is during Ramadan, right? And then slowly introduce each food, and then monitor how you feel. If you feel better, then most likely you're sensitive to that food. But if you don't feel any difference, then you're not, right? And then you need to fix your sleep, because sleep, if you don't sleep well, it's really going to be detrimental in terms of like, your overall health and well-being. One thing that I like to do is walking. So I like to walk from 30 to an hour every night, because that's when I have time, and it just helps me, you know, um, cool down. And also taking sleeping aids like chamomile, passion flower, valerian roots. There's different tea on the market that can help you sleep, that can help you fix your sleep, but fixing your sleep is very detrimental. And then taking your supplements, I shared a list of different supplements that you can take. And then ashwagandha. Please try ashwagandha. Most people are not allergic to it. There's no reports of anyone who is really allergic to ashwagandha, but I mean, just try it and see how you feel. And then introduce also intermittent fasting, change what you eat, right? That's the whole presentation we're having today. Change what you eat and try to focus really on whole food, try to eat as natural as possible. And gluten is not natural, right? So I know rice and pasta, actually, rice is gluten free. I mean, pasta, if you ask someone who doesn't really have a lot of background in nutrition, for them, not eating pasta is natural as long as it's cooked. A home cooked meal is natural, but no, pasta is not natural. When I say whole food diet, is how you find it in the natural state, right? And then exercise, walking is one that I like to do. And then walking also exposes you to the sun, and that's getting vitamin D, and we spoke about vitamin D. And then therapy, talk to someone, right? Talk to someone, and Nisa helpline is, a tool that you can use, but try to talk to someone, to your family, to your friend. But it's always better to consult, someone who is a specialist in that. And of course, increasing dua and prayers. We're all Muslim here. And remember, that Allah never burdens a soul more than it can bear. And, Allah who created you knows you better than you know yourself. So, and He knows that you can handle this. So just have trust in yourself. And this is just, um, something that you have better control. You will eventually have a better control on. So what are the main takeaway? Obviously, good nutrition leads to a better life, right? Improving your eating habits will improve your overall well-being. We spoke about this, and it will especially increase your resilience to better address mental health issues. If you're well health-wise, you will be more resilient towards anything that can come to you in your life. And then, of course, while a good diet may not be the only solution to your mental health issues, it can be a complementary treatment for individuals struggling with mental health disorders. Lastly, our body functions more efficiently if it is well fueled. Food is the fuel by which all body systems function, and failing to provide adequate fuel in one area can lead to a disruption in other areas, including mental health. Of course, it is easier said than done, because I mean, like, it is extremely difficult for someone dealing with mental health issues to change what they eat overnight. But especially when it comes to cutting off food, like, junk food, it's comfort food, right? But you should always be aware of the direct correlation between what you eat and how you feel. Lastly, there are several ways to treat mental health issues, but diet and nutrition should always be an important piece of the mental health puzzle that allow people with depression to manage their symptoms and experience in the long term. And then remember, after all, we are what we eat. So before I close or finish my presentation, we will open, a Q&A session. But this is where you can find me. You can send me an email for a one-on-one consultation. You can also find me on Instagram. I'm very active on social media, and I have also a YouTube channel that's in Somali. But yeah, thank you, and of course, yeah, Ramadan Mubarak. That's very, yeah, that's in a few days.
Thank you so much, Naz. That was really beneficial. Lots of information there for everyone to work with. As Naz has said, we reached the Q&A portion. So for anyone who has questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A section on the bottom of Zoom. We do have a few questions for you. And again, last call for anyone who hasn't submitted a question yet. But the first is, would you recommend doing like a blood test to see if you have deficiencies?
Deficiencies. So yes, definitely. I mean, like if you can afford to get it tested, it's always good to have it tested. But of course, again, as I said, it depends on where you are and if that's available to you. But just generally speaking, if you can afford it, yes, do it. But if you're deficient in something, it's pretty much, it's most likely obvious. If you're deficient in iron, you'll get headaches or you'll be
feel
dizzy,
it.
etc. Yeah.
So, Naz, can you go to the last slide with your contact info with the social media thing? Some people are asking in the chat. Awesome. Okay. Okay, that's helpful. I guess you can't do that through the doctor, right? You'd have to pay somebody to get it done.
Yeah, it's, I mean, your doctor can refer you to
Okay.
a clinic. In Canada, most likely it is covered. But if you want a test, you have to go see a clinic and get it done privately. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I understand. Another question is, what is a good food source for magnesium?
Magnesium, it's usually present in leafy greens. If you're not into organ meats, I've shared that organ meats or even protein in general. Meat has a lot more minerals than if you would eat I don't know, um, vegetables in general. So protein, but organ meats are the best source of minerals, magnesium, potassium, iron, etc., etc. Yeah.
Would you recommend fasting for someone with an eating disorder?
So that's actually a very good question. So for someone with eating disorder, it's always good to consult your doctor with anything you're doing. But then again, I always like to remind people that usually doctors do not really get any nutrition classes through their medical school. So it's always better if you have, most likely if you have eating disorder, that you're working with a dietitian or a specialist. So of course, always consult your specialist in terms of fasting or anything you try. But technically, 12-12, the first one that I shared, everybody should do it. But the more extreme ones, like if you're a mother, if you're breastfeeding, if you have a medical condition that doesn't allow you to fast, all of that you have to be aware of and take into consideration.
You mentioned ashwagandha. Where is that? Where can somebody find that?
Oh, you can find it anywhere. I know they sell it on Amazon. They sell it also in Whole Food stores. You can find it pretty much everywhere. Yeah, in Canada. Yeah.
We have so many questions. Sorry, I'm just kind of going rapid fire here. What is the best way of dieting considering we have to incorporate iftar now? Like, how would that work?
Okay. So of course, when it comes to diets, I don't like really telling people you should do this because it's really unique to everybody. But during Ramadan, you have to, hydrate. It's very important. I know a lot of people like to drink tea and everything they wanted to drink in the day. Some people even drink coffee, after iftar. But it's really important to hydrate. That's one thing. And then protein, protein, protein. I'm really big on protein. A lot of people are scared of eating, meat on a daily basis, but meat is really bioavailable in terms of, vitamins and minerals. And if you're lacking any mineral, like we spoke about it, iron, for example, then you have to increase your meat consumption. So just increase protein. And then obviously we want to make it sustainable. Still enjoy, your if Ramadan samosa, for example, right? Still enjoy it, but just be more, aware of, how many samosa you're consuming and et cetera, et cetera. Moderation is key. Yeah.
Right. Okay. What would you suggest for an emotional eater?
I think we're all emotional eaters, especially if we're women, right? I think for me, anyways, a big thing is fasting. The thing with emotional eaters is that we eat when we're happy, we eat when we're sad, we eat for everything, right? And then we end up eating all the time. So the
Right.
key is to, if you know that you're only able to eat a certain time of the day, then at least that will, help you manage your weight better. So fasting is proving, right? I spoke about it. It can be a whole presentation. We can talk about fasting for hours, but it is extremely healing. And something that just came up to my mind real quick is that, even in the Quran, it says that when someone is fasting, the body is eating itself. That's literally like what it is said in the Quran. The body is eating itself. And now the science have found that there's a state called autophagy. So autophagy is when you're fasting for more than 18 hours, your body goes in an autophagy state, and it basically kills all the not like dead cells, and it recycles other cells. It's just really cleansing. But the real
Detoxifying, which is what you had said, right?
exactly, but literally the body's eating itself because some
Mm,
cells are eating others, and it's just amazing. And
wow.
that's in the Quran. But fasting is something that works for a lot of people when you're emotional eater. Yeah.
Right. Okay. That's really good advice. Um, for someone who's really addicted to junk food or eating out, what would you kind of recommend without having potentially going cold turkey?
So again, fasting, that's one thing, because that's going to control your eating. And also fasting has, because I spoke about gut flora, right? If you have tendencies of like craving sweets, it's most likely because you have more bad bacteria than good bacteria. So you need to replenish your gut flora, consuming more probiotics, prebiotics. Pre is basically what the bacteria eats, and pro is good bacteria. So just try to find a good probiotic supplement, but also fast, because that's also going to cleanse your gut flora,
Okay.
inshallah.
Okay, one more question and then we'll go into wrapping it up. One is somebody was asking if you could put up this slide again about inflammation.
Okay.
And while you're doing that, um, anxiety disorder is one of the most common mental illnesses or struggles that people face. So, what foods would you recommend to help manage it or potentially to remove to manage it?
So potentially remove that's tricky because I mean it's anxiety is more complex. But if we think about food, I think I just wanna,
The inflammation one? Yeah, sorry.
sorry, I cannot multitask.
No, it's totally okay.
Right here. Okay. So for anxiety, what really triggers anxiety is when you have a lot of hormonal imbalance. And as I spoke about, insulin is a hormone, and it has a huge role in our overall well-being. Because if your body is producing too much of one hormone, it's gonna imbalance your whole your whole hormone imbalance. So I would say stay away from sweets. It's very hard, right? Because you're anxious and you want a comfort food. But that's why, again, I say, I think for me, fasting, it helps a lot, because if you're not spiking your blood sugar, because you spike your blood sugar every time you consume food. So if your hormones, or if your blood sugar is stable for most of the day, and you only spike it for a couple of hours, then you're going to better deal with or cope with anxiety in general. But then again, anxiety, it's very complex. You need to see a therapist. That's a no-brainer. But when it comes to food, you have to really just stay away from sweets and gluten. I spoke about gluten. That's a big one. And yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's awesome. I don't know if you have had a chance to look at the chat, but everyone's blowing up in the chat saying thank you, how interesting this all was, and really thank you for answering all those questions, and for the great presentation. For all of those who registered on Zoom, you'll be receiving a self-help guide created by Naz in your inbox soon. And for those who didn't register, you can access the resource guide on our website, nisahelpline.com/wellness. We've shared the website link in the chat for you, I believe. Before we wrap up, keep an eye on nisahelpline.ca or our social media platforms to get more information about our next workshop in the series, which will be on postpartum care and depression. And, looking forward to seeing you all at our next workshop, inshallah. Thank you all once again for joining us this evening. Thank you, Naz, and assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.